This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
What up, Detroit? It's Shea back in the driver's seat on the Monday mashup, October 8th. Shout out to the doc, John Macaroon, filling in for me last week. Obviously, I was incapacitated, unable to take part in the podcast a week ago as John filled everyone in so nicely. As the doc told you, I was out there getting engagement photos done. I kind of want to start this off with the opportunity to defend myself because I caught a lot of flack from our audience on Twitter, responding to Detroit Sports Podcast on Twitter at Detroit Podcast, a couple responding to me at Norling Shea on Twitter, and people were not happy that I was being controlled by my fiance and taking engagement photos on an NFL Sunday. And I understand. I wasn't thrilled about it. I don't want to say that when the idea came up and I was told that it was going to be that Sunday that I was jumping out of my boots, excited to have the engagement photos taken on an NFL Sunday, but we had to get them done. And my fiance is in grad school, and I'm in school, and I work, and I do this podcast, and I like to watch sports. So we don't have a lot of time that overlaps. Sunday was kind of the day that it had to get done. So we went, we got it done, and now it's over, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. I don't have to do it on an NFL Sunday again. And I'm not married yet, so I'm still kind of learning in this field. But I have people who are close to me who are in happy marriages. And they have told me this little phrase that I'm sure you have heard, but I ask, what's the key to a happy life? What's the key to a happy marriage? How do you guys keep it good and keep it happy and stay together for so long? And I keep hearing this phrase. It goes like this: happy wife, happy life. Sounds good to me. If I don't take engagement photos because I got to watch football, my fiance is not going to be a happy camper. So I bit the bullet. The doc, John Macaroon, stepped in, just did a fantastic job taking the show, getting in the driver's seat, doing his thing for the Monday mashup a week ago. But now I am back. I am ready to rock and roll after a huge weekend of sports in all facets of sport. It was not just NFL, it was not just college football. There was an MMA fight. There was an MMA fight at a basketball game. There is the all-time baseball rivalry happening in the postseason. Oh, and there was NFL football, and there was college football too. So, obviously, we're going to touch on all of that. Going to start, though, with the Sox and the Yankees. Okay, let me set the scene here. This is a series I think I haven't been too much of a hidden fan here, where I think people that over the course of this show have gotten to know me a little bit know that I'm kind of a Boston sports guy. I'm a Patriots fan. I'm a big Celtics fan. I love the Red Sox. But when I was growing up here in Detroit, I had season tickets. Through my family, we would go to Comerica Park. We had season tickets to the Tigers. I grew up on Tiger baseball. That was like my first foray into the world of baseball, the world of sports, was Tiger baseball. And I had family living in Boston. I loved Boston sports my whole life, but it was always the Tigers were the one team that trumped my allegiance to Boston sports. And that's why watching this series, Sox-Yankees, in Detroit too, it's easy to hate the Yankees. Everybody in the world hates the Yankees. It's so easy to hate them. But I sat down. I start watching game one. I'm gearing up. I'm like, the Sox won 108 games. Let's go. Fuck the Yankees. Let's go. Let's beat them. Game one starts, and I had a really hard time getting into this. And I have a feeling that Detroit Tigers fans can relate, because I was watching Rick Porcello warm up in the bullpen, come out onto the field. You watch J.D. Martinez hit a 3-run home run in the bottom of the first inning in game one. David Price is in the dugout. He's taking the mound in game two. Ian Kinsler's playing second base. Dave Dombrowski is up in the president's suite and watching the game in the executive suite as the general manager of the Boston Red Sox. every former Tiger imaginable that's not still on the Tigers or Justin Verlander is playing to win a World Series with the Boston Red Sox. And to me, as much as I want to be like a big-time Red Sox fan, as much as I'm F the Yankees and I just want to see the Sox pound them, I am having a really hard time watching these games because I just keep thinking, why the hell couldn't we get it done here? You know, David Dombrowski ran out of here with his tail between his legs, selling off the team after the sweep with Baltimore and the Brad Ausmus debacles. Ran out of here, couldn't get to Boston quick enough. Made the trade to get David Price. Made moves to get Rick Porcello. Planted Rick Porcello there before he left, actually. Made the move to sign JD Martinez, less than market value. Then midway through this season, makes a move at the deadline to get Ian Kinsler. All these guys he's had in Detroit. But the one thing that's really funny to me about these Red Sox, for all the offense and all the 108 wins and all the incredible defensive plays in the outfield, they have the exact same problem that kept the Tigers from winning a World Series all those years that we were competing. They don't have any type of bullpen. David Dombrowski went and made the greatest offensive team anyone has ever seen. Went and made one of the best baseball teams in the history of Major League Baseball in Boston, and still cannot figure out how to put a bullpen together for October, to the point that Alex Cora is dipping into his Game 3 starter Rick Porcello in the 6th inning in Game 1. How does this guy not know how to form a bullpen? And it actually, even as a Red Sox fan, there is a bit of happiness that comes out of me watching that and going, wow, Didi still can't figure out how to put together a bullpen. There's a bit of happiness in knowing all of these former Tigers might not get the ring somewhere else. And that's why, even though I am a Red Sox fan, I don't know that I can root for them to win the World Series, because there is that bittersweet taste when I watch them with all these former Tigers. It's one thing I never understood. I was perfectly fine with Justin Verlander winning the World Series last year, but full transparency, I was rooting for the Dodgers because you're not a Tiger anymore. There were a lot of Tiger fans going, I hope the Astros win because JV deserves one. To be frank, I don't really care if JV gets one. I don't give a rat's ass if he ever wins another one. And now that Porcello and JD and David Price and Ian Kinsler are all on a different team, I could care less if they win one too. And even as a Red Sox fan, it's making me very difficult to get into this series, to get into this team, and to really go for them to win the World Series, because I have to look at all these former Tigers who never got the job done here. And if they get it done there, it's just going to leave me with a really bittersweet taste. Moving on, sticking with Boston, there was an MMA fight, Khabib and McGregor, and it ended in absolute madness. Khabib with the win in the 4th round. Was a great fight. McGregor could not hang in with him, but it ended really, really badly, with Khabib jumping over the fence, with McGregor having one of Khabib's entourage jump over the fence, land a punch on him. Just an absolute mess at the end of this fight. And at the same time, in Cleveland, the Boston Celtics, Marcus Smart and J.R. Smith got into it. And it was one of the most fantastic things. If you haven't seen it, look up the video. Marcus Smart had 2 Boston Celtics players, Jason Tatum and Terry Rozier, holding him back, literally falling to the ground to keep him from J.R. Smith. To me, more than anything, it goes to show why the NBA, in my eyes, continues to put out the best product. And no, I don't know that this feud is a great look, but it is drama. And it's drama that the other leagues can't create. I was just talking about I can't get into Sox Yankees. Part of the reason why is that rivalry, even though it's being renewed now, doesn't have the same juice that it had in 2003 with Aaron Boone hitting the home run, or 2004 with the comeback. It doesn't have that juice that it used to have, where there was just, it felt like you were on the knife's edge of an absolute brawl every time you watch those games. The same thing goes for the NFL. These guys aren't allowed to have personalities, or they get fined, or they get suspended. They aren't allowed to have fun and have personalities and talk, except for in the game they can talk trash and they're not going to get fined for that. But you can't do it after the game. You can't go into press conferences and say things like Draymond said, catch me on the street, or like Marcus Smart said, catch me on the street, catch me out back. J.R. Smith said the same thing. You can't do that in the NFL. And it's not a great look in the NBA either, but it provides drama because I'll tell you what, Celtics Cavs is going to suddenly be a big watch all season to see if Marcus Smart and J.R. Smith decide to take each other's heads off. It's a drama that only the NBA has been able to create, and only the NBA has been able to leverage that into growing TV ratings. And it's one reason why I think the NFL has a problem on its hands. It's one reason why I think the NFL needs to kind of let their players loose and let their players have a little bit more fun and have a little bit more personality. You know, go show yourself off. Go talk that talk. Build some drama. Show you that you don't like each other. We see it in the AFC North with the Steelers and the Ravens and the Browns and the Bengals. Those guys want to murder each other every time they play. But in the most part, that's not the NFL anymore. It's gotten a little bit soft. Whereas the NBA has these tough guys who are like, meet me in the parking lot, bitch, let's go. That is cool. And I think it's working wonders for the NBA. I think it's huge that they are able to, instead of going, look, guys, this is really ugly, they can leverage this and turn it into something that is actually good for the league. It's something I think the other leagues could take that branding. And one more thing before I get into the local stuff, that I want to stick with Boston again, because I didn't get a chance. I would have loved to do a podcast on Friday and get in and briefly just touch on the Patriots. But I know Lions fans were, after they beat the Patriots at home a couple weeks ago, were all types of happy. You know, the season was saved. All of a sudden, you have a chance to get back into the division hunt. You know, all of a sudden, this team's got all types of momentum, all types of drive. They had that crazy locker room celebration. It looked like they were really ready to go. Big statement win over the juggernaut of the NFL for the last 20 years. And what do we have now? Yeah, the Lions beat the Packers today, and I got some thoughts on that coming up in a little bit. But before we get to that, dude, the Patriots have shown that they are still the Patriots. Went and stomped the Dolphins, who came into Foxborough 3-0, and the Patriots beat them 38-7. Then on a short week, they put up 38 points again and stomp Andrew Luck again in Foxborough. Andrew Luck now in Foxborough in his career, he's 0-4, and he's being outscored something like 200-75. The Patriots are still the Patriots. The AFC East is still theirs. We've just been proven. You know, every single year we try to do the same thing. The Patriots are dead. Oh, look, 2014, they lose at Arrowhead on Monday Night Football. Blowout loss. Tom Brady gets benched for Jimmy Garoppolo. What happens after that? They go win the Super Bowl. In 2015, all the Deflategate stuff. 2016, all the Deflategate stuff. What happens? Win the Super Bowl. Last year, Max Kellerman. Tom Brady's getting pretty old, guys. He's going to fall off that cliff here. I'm telling you, he's going to fall off that cliff. Wins MVP, makes a trip to the Super Bowl. This year, starts 1-2. Oh my God, the wheels fell off in Detroit. They're done. The dynasty's over. It's dead. Did you see the corpses they were playing at wide receiver? 38-7 against Miami. 38-24 against Indianapolis. Julian Edelman's back. Gronk's making catches. Death taxes the Patriots win the AFC East. All right, on that note, let's get into college football, and I have some words for Michigan State. But before we get to that, I want to touch on the University of Michigan. The Michigan Wolverines are perplexing to me. They're a tale of two halves teams. You know, you look at the game against Northwestern. Before you even were able to turn the TV on, down 17-0. Northwestern never scored again. Michigan ended up winning that game, 24-17, I believe. You know, last week, or Saturday, against Maryland. You open it up, you're down 7-3 for most of the first quarter. You go into halftime, I believe it was 10-7 Michigan. The game ends up, I think, 42-24, Michigan won. It's a tale of two halves, and it's very perplexing. Because I think Michigan now, when you go up against the Wisconsins, or the Penn States, the Michigan... wait, I'll get to that one. The Ohio States, when you go up against those teams, you have to play a full game of football. Jim Harbaugh this year has been better than he was a year ago. I think defaulted by the fact that he has a passable quarterback in his backfield, but he has not been excellent. And in fact, against Northwestern, it opened up looking very bad. I don't think Jim Harbaugh's off the hot seat yet. I think Michigan fans are ready to kind of jump back on and go, look, I think we can make the playoff. You look at Notre Dame. The only loss that you have, your only blemish so far, is against Notre Dame. It's a team that, yeah, they look like they might run the table. So that's a quality loss. And we know the way that college football works. Sometimes quality losses are better than wins. You look at if you beat Wisconsin at home, all of a sudden that's a quality win. You beat Michigan State. That's a win against your rival. And then you get to shut all that talk down. If you manage to win out until you get to Ohio State and you come to Ohio State and Ohio State's a no-loss team and you're a one-loss team, look, that's a game where we know the story. We know that Ohio State has won, 17 of 18? But you throw the record books out for that game. There's a hatred that burns in both hearts for those teams where you can go, hey, doesn't really matter how good or how bad either of us is. This could be a close game. We saw it last year. Michigan was 8-5. They hung into that game for the majority of the time. Not until the end of the fourth quarter did Ohio State start to kind of blow things up. Michigan State game is kind of the same thing for Michigan. You can go in, it doesn't really matter how bad Michigan State is or how bad Michigan is, whatever. That's a game where there's a hatred that burns in the hearts of the players in East Lansing. There's a hatred that burns in the hearts of the players in Ann Arbor. Those teams meet, you can throw it all out. Doesn't matter how well you've played up until that point. That's the only game you're thinking about. So Michigan, at this point in time, is a weird team because they haven't been able to play a full game yet. Because Shea Patterson at times looks divine and at times looks dreadful. But it's a team that I think is starting to kind of get together at the right time. And I think if they can manage to pull off wins throughout, if they can get the win against Wisconsin, they can get the win against Michigan State, they can get the win against Penn State, all of a sudden, you're just looking at that game in Columbus. And if you can pull a win off there, you're going to Indy, and you're probably going to the college football playoff. I think Michigan fan should be a little worried because their team doesn't look great at times, but your goals are still in front of you. Everything you want to accomplish is still in your hands. Go take care of your business. And they look like a team that maybe can get it done. I have worries about them playing Wisconsin. Wisconsin has the best offensive line in the Big Ten. They're going to have the best chance of punishing Michigan's front seven of any team that sees Michigan's defense this entire season. But I'm not sure it'll be enough. We're talking about a Wisconsin team that lost at home to BYU. They clearly are able to disengage because that's a BYU team that got their doors blown off by Utah State. So I don't know if I can put Wisconsin on some pedestal and think that they're going to beat Michigan. Penn State, same thing. We saw them hang with Ohio State, but that's at home in a whiteout. You might as well make them 10 times better than they actually are in those situations. I don't know that Penn State beats Michigan. Michigan State, I'll get to it. I think that Michigan has a shot. And I'm not even a Michigan fan, but I think they got a shot. And in fact, I'll say it like this. If you don't get to Indy, then Jim Harbaugh's seat is hot. Because you have everything lining up for you now. It may not seem like it, but you have everything lining up for you now. Go take care of business. Go beat good teams on the road. Beat your rivals. Do the things you haven't been able to do for the last 12 years. That's it. I know it sounds like I'm asking a lot. I really don't think I am. I don't think that's a very high bar. Just go do the things that you were brought here to do. Jim Harbaugh was brought to Michigan for $9 million a year to bring the program back. Not to get 10 wins a season and some pussyfoot bowl game in the end of December or the first weekend in January. He was brought here for $9 million to make Michigan a national champion again. Get your ass to Indy. Get your ass to the college football playoff. All of your goals are ahead of you. Beat your rivals. Beat good teams on the road. Go to Indy. Go to the playoff, or your seat should be hot. If you think my expectations are too high, feel free. Let me know. You can tag me on Twitter. You can call us. Leave us a voicemail. I don't have the number offhand. I will get it by the end of the show. If you think I'm nuts, go for it. Let me know. Blast me. But I don't think that's an unfair expectation to have for a guy who was brought in for $9 million, sold as a quarterback guru, said to make the pro-style offense great again, and he's going to come into Michigan, and he's going to make Michigan great again. And he hasn't done it yet. But now things are shaping up to be a season where you should. And if you don't, I think it's a failure. Now I want to get to Michigan State. A couple weeks ago, I came in and I blasted Mark D'Antonio for a showing against an Indiana team that I thought was disgusting, even though it was a double-digit win. I had never been so unhappy in my life with a double-digit win as I was that game on the road in Indiana. Then they came out a week later, beat the brakes off Central Michigan. The game got a little close there in the fourth, but it was kind of fake because Michigan State put the backup quarterback in, the second-string defense. They didn't throw the ball one time after Lewerke came out at quarterback. Kind of a fake fourth quarter. Then you do the unthinkable. I don't want to come in here and sit and say, it's time to fire Mark D'Antonio. I don't. I understand if people are at that point. I understand if you've reached the level of impatience with this offense, the level of impatience with a defense that is very, very good against the run, sucks against the pass, and can't hold it down in clutch time. I understand that you think the offensive coordinators are out there calling the game Mark D'Antonio wants called, and I believe that. But I am not ready to say it's time to fire him. I'm close, but I'm not there. I'm ready to say it's time to hold him accountable. Before Mark D'Antonio got to Michigan State, what were the Michigan State Spartans? Bottom feeders in the Big Ten, the butt of every joke, John L. Smith with idiot coordinators. What are we now? I mean, what are we now in 2018? What are the Michigan State Spartans? They're certainly not top feeders in the Big Ten. They aren't a juggernaut of the Big Ten. That's Ohio State. That's Wisconsin. It's not Michigan State. You're not even Notre Dame. You know what you are? You're Mark D'Antonio and idiot coordinators. And I'm comfortable saying idiot coordinators. I could go out there with all the play calling experience of a kid who plays Madden, and I would call better plays than David Pop Warner and Jim Bullman. With the game on the line, you have a possession ready to take the lead to ice the game against Northwestern at home. On 1st and 10 from your own 20, you call a halfback swing 6 yards behind the line of scrimmage for a loss? You couldn't protect Brian Lewerke for your life. And you put him in spots where he's play-action passing and getting in horrible positions where he can't even scramble out of it. You ignore Felton Davis after he catches 2 touchdowns. And as much as I want to solely pin this on my arch nemesis David Pop Warner and Jim Bullman, Mark D'Antonio needs to be held accountable for it. They are his coordinators. They are his guys. These are the same guys that went 3-9 1 year after making the college football playoff. And Mark D'Antonio didn't fire anyone. How? How is that possible? Any other school in the country that wants to play with the big boys, with Alabama, with Ohio State, with Michigan, with Notre Dame, with USC, Texas, all the big blue blood names in college football. Pick one. You go 3-9, see ya. But no, not at Michigan State. We're a family at Michigan State. No, we hang on to our boys. Pat Narduzzi got the hell out. The defense hasn't been the same since. But no, we hang on to our boys. We hang on to our boys, Dave Warner and Jim Bullman. You know why? Because they got that Rose Bowl ring. And God forbid you tell a Spartan fan that Mark D'Antonio should be held accountable for these losses. No, you put it on the players. Mark D'Antonio, he got us a Rose Bowl ring. I could give a rat's ass about the Rose Bowl from 5 years ago. Yeah, it was fun. But guess what? That team's not coming through the tunnel anymore. That team's not coming through the tunnel again. Not with these guys. Not with these coordinators. Not with these coaches. It's not happening. You know, Mark D'Antonio had a charm about him with his grumpiness, with his just do your job and win attitude. And it worked. It's not working anymore. You don't get to go 10-2, whatever the record was last year. You don't get to win 10 games in a bowl game, bring back 21 starters, and then lose that game at home against Michigan State. You don't get to. Sorry. Against Northwestern, excuse me. But you don't get to. It doesn't happen. You aren't allowed to do that. No other school in America that wants to play with the big boys is allowed to do that. And I know a year ago we go 3-9, then we go 10 wins. Hey, it was just the down year. D'Antonio always has them. Now we're back. Back to what? Losing at home to Northwestern? You know, I got to sit here and go scroll through my Twitter timeline and see things like I'm perfectly okay with 2018 being like the 2012 Spartans as long as 2019 is like the 2013 Spartans. This was supposed to be the 2013 Spartans. This was the team that returned 10 starters on defense and 11 on offense. This was the team with the best receiving core in the Big Ten. This was the team with a guy in Brian Lewerke who was supposed to be the best quarterback in the Big Ten, but so far hasn't played like it and hasn't been put in position to play like it by his coaches. I'm tired of it. And I ask Michigan State fans to do one thing. Hold your coach accountable. For all the talk that we do at Michigan, ha ha, Jim Harbaugh can't beat his rivals. Ha ha ha, Jim Harbaugh can't finish higher than third in his division. Ha ha ha, Jim Harbaugh can't beat Ohio State. Jim Harbaugh can't go to Indy. Dude, look at your own coach. What are you doing? Losing at home to Northwestern. Go look at Michigan's 5 losses last year. None of those 5 were as bad as the loss in Arizona State or the loss at home to Northwestern. But, ha ha, Michigan State goes 8-5. Now it makes Michigan fans who pull up 3-9 look a little bit more credible because Michigan State looks awful. It's time to hold D'Antonio accountable. Is it time to fire him? Not yet. If we get to the end of the season, they didn't win more than 4 games. Okay, we can discuss that. Right now, no. But it's time to hold him accountable. And I'll tell you what, it's time to get rid of your coordinators. If Mark D'Antonio is starting the season as head coach at Michigan State in 2019 and his offensive coordinators are Dave Warner and Jim Bowman, I will not watch a game. I won't. I'm going to have a hard time watching a game this year. I haven't written him off against Michigan yet. I've written him off against Penn State. No way in hell. You opened as a 14.5-point dog. You're not beating him. You're not. I haven't written him off against Michigan because, like I said, there's a hatred that burns in their hearts, and Mark D'Antonio has done as good a job as any coach in America at making his players understand that one game. But you're not beating Ohio State. You're not beating Penn State. If by some act of God you luck into those 2 wins and go to Indy, you're not beating Wisconsin. And if by some act of God that happens, who are you going to beat in the playoff? Notre Dame? Alabama? Hell no. Clemson? Nope. In fact, on the topic of the playoff, the Big Ten might get shut out. It wouldn't surprise me. Because as much as I say Michigan has a shot, it is a shot. Ohio State really is the only team that could lose and still get there. But Notre Dame might run the table. Alabama might run the table. Georgia might have 1 loss to Alabama. Clemson might run the table. Where does Ohio State fit into that? If they lose to Michigan, where does Ohio State fit into that? Or if they lose to Wisconsin, where does Ohio State fit into that? Where does Wisconsin fit into that? Who lost to BYU? I guarantee the committee takes Georgia with 1 loss in a neutral site game against Alabama over Wisconsin. Or if Georgia happens to win the game in Georgia against Alabama regular season, which, by the way, I think they have a shot. Alabama is 1-5 there in the past 8 years, 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know that the Big Ten is automatically set to go to the playoff. I don't. A 1-loss Alabama team is an SEC champion, and a 1-loss Georgia team is an SEC runner-up with an undefeated Clemson and an undefeated Notre Dame. Big Ten's out. Especially if Michigan wins the Big Ten and Notre Dame's undefeated, you're definitely screwed then. That head-to-head loss week 1 kills you. Sure, Jim Harbaugh's seat wouldn't be hot, but that kills you. And it would be a tough look for the Big Ten because last year they missed the playoff. And they were called the best conference in America. This year, they don't look like the best conference in America, and they have a realistic chance at missing the playoff again. Big Ten football is in a weird spot, and I'll tell you why. It's a little bit like John Gruden's time machine. It's a little bit like they think it's still 1997, where Michigan is dedicated to playing this pro-style smash-mouth defense game, and Michigan State is dedicated to, we have an identity at Michigan State. We're going to run a fullback out there, line up in the eye, and run it down your throat. Even though our offensive line is horrible and we have no explosive running backs, we're going to pound this rock. When every other school in America is not playing that game anymore, maybe it's time to adapt. Look at what Ohio State does when they spread everyone out and throw the ball around the yard. Look at what Alabama does when they spread everyone out and let Tua throw the ball around the yard. Michigan State has Brian Lewerke, the best wide receivers in the Big Ten, no offensive line, no running backs of note. Spread everybody out and throw the ball around the yard. Running jet sweeps that nobody else in the country would call. Short side jet sweeps. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to watch that. Same with Michigan. Just the most vanilla play calling. Look at every other school. They aren't doing that. It's not the way the college football game is played anymore. The Big Ten is playing like it's still 1995. It's not. And I think that's why the Big Ten's having a hard time getting into the playoff. Because outside of Ohio State, nobody has adapted. Ohio State's the only team that went and found a coach that had success with a spread offense in the SEC and brought him in. What'd he do? He applied the same offense. What's he had? A lot of success. It's crazy. It's like if you adapt to the way the game is played, you'll play better. I don't know. Maybe the coaching staff in East Lansing and the coaching staff in Ann Arbor doesn't understand that. But seems to me like they should, because they are stuck in the past. It's not the way the game's played anymore. Before we wrap everything up, the Lions won a game against the Packers today, at home. In the Aaron Rodgers era, they are now 4-13 against the Packers. And the Lions inspired hope in Detroit fans everywhere again, that maybe it isn't all a loss. Maybe the season's not over. I'm going to just go ahead and snuff that hope right out. The Packers were compromised in the fact that they had no receivers of note able to play at 100%. Devontae Adams played. Make no mistake, he was not 100%. Also, understand this. You scored 31 points. Looks good, right? You had 250 yards of offense. So do the math there. The Packers beat themselves today. And I'll tell you what, the Packers are not a good football team. And they went into Detroit and they beat themselves today. 3 turnovers gave Matthew Stafford a short field. 3 turnovers allowed the Lions to put up 31 points. And if the Packers had had a kicker with a leg attached to his body, the Lions still would have lost. 4 missed field goals and a missed extra point for Mason Crosby. That is a total of 13 points. And the Lions won 31-20. So you do the math. Should have been 33-31 Packers. The Lions defense allowed the Packers to put up 530 yards of offense in their own house. Dude, if you looked at that game as a Lion fan, and this is kind of like just me as not a Lion fan trying to understand. I get like you look for hope maybe where there is none, because all the other professional sports teams in this city are so bad right now that there's no way the Lions can be this bad too. But I don't understand how Lion fans can continue to do this to themselves and drink the Kool-Aid and go, we beat Aaron Rodgers. No, Aaron Rodgers beat himself. Mason Crosby beat his own team. Mason Crosby might as well have walked onto the field in Honolulu blue. It would have been just as good. He would have been just as good for the Packers if he were kicking for the Lions. The Lions didn't win that game. Make no mistake. The defense did not play well. Darius Slay got beat more than once. You gave up 530 yards. The only reason you lost you won is because Mason Crosby couldn't finish a field goal. It's the only reason. If he makes 3 of those 4 and an extra point, it's 31-29. Or excuse me, it's 31-30. He makes 3 of the 4 and an extra point, 31-30. Combined with the one he made in garbage time that I forgot to count earlier, all of a sudden, 33-31. If he makes all his field goals, it's 36-31 Packers. The Lions did not win that game. When you, they don't play a part in Mason Crosby missing a field goal. Mason Crosby does that himself. The defense is not causing him to miss a field goal unless they block it, which they never did. And they weren't long field goals. This was just the worst day of Mason Crosby's entire football life. And if the Packers are smart, he will not be on the team tomorrow. But make no mistake, the Lions did not win that game. I can't come out here after looking at them win 31-23 final score and go, yeah, they played really well. Great day for Matt Stafford. Great day for the defense. Great day for the offense. They just put it all together and played a complete game. I can't say that because they shouldn't have won. You can't give up 530 yards in your own house. That's a fluke. You think if you let the Bears come in with Khalil Mack and put up half of that yardage, you have a shot? No. I know the Vikings aren't playing great, but if you let the Vikings come in and you let Kirk Cousins throw for 430 yards, do you think you win that game? No. If I told you that Aaron Rodgers was going to come into Detroit and throw for 440 yards of offense, 440 passing yards, if I told you he was going to come into Detroit and do that today, 999 times out of 1,000, you lose that game. This was the one. Because God came down and struck Mason Crosby's leg with a lightning bolt and would not allow him to make a field goal. But I can't get on here and say nice things about the Lions. The only nice thing I can say is it was in the win column. That's it. They didn't play well at all. The offense did just enough by not turning the ball over, but they were handed a short field. I didn't see them really finish long drives consistently again, and that has been their problem this year, an inability to finish long drives. Prater missed a field goal. Like, I can't get in here and say nice things when they play like that, just because they got the win. It's the same thing when I saw Michigan State beat Indiana by double digits in the ugliest fashion possible. I couldn't say nice things about it. This same thing today for the Lions. I can't say nice things about it. The Packers beat themselves. You did not beat the Packers. That's it. So my advice to Lion fan is this: don't drink the Kool-Aid. Don't start searching for hope and saying, if we win the next 8 games, we're going to go to the playoffs. We can make it happen. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. Don't give the Lions the satisfaction of you buying back into them. Don't give ownership that satisfaction. Hold them accountable. The same way I want D'Antonio held accountable. The same way I want Harbaugh held accountable. Hold the Lions accountable. Don't throw a party because they beat the Packers. The Packers beat themselves. Hold them accountable. As fans, stop watching. Stop going to the games. Because as long as the Lions keep seeing green in the profit margins, in the revenue fields, they aren't going to have any motivation to put a better product out for you. And again, make no mistake, this win does not mean anything for the season. The season is still over. You aren't going to be able to give up 530 yards of offense against anyone and win those games. This is a 1 in 1,000 type game. I would like to end on a happier note because I feel like that was a lot of anger. I should have maybe staggered that a little bit. Talked about Michigan State at the beginning, talked about the Lions at the end, or talked about both in the middle so that I could end a little happier. But for me, the real happiness is the Patriots aren't dead. The Lions, at least, even though I think the season is still over from a playoffs perspective, they're at least going to be maybe watchable. And again, I know it probably sounds like, holy shit, Shea hates the Lions. This sucks. I don't want to listen to this. Dude, doing a show in Detroit, the Lions being good would be good for me. I don't want to get on this and have to say that the Lions are fooling you again. But it's just the way it is. And until the organization is held accountable by the fan base, by the people who sign their checks metaphorically, it's not going to change. It's not. You know, 20 years from now, Martha Ford is going to be talking about how she loves Matt Patricia, and there will not be a single playoff winner banner to hang and talk about. Not one. The organization needs to be held accountable, and it's time for the fan base to do that. The fan base should not be accepting a 31-23 win where you gave up over 500 yards. You just shouldn't. You didn't look good. The Packers just looked bad. That's what that comes down to. That's the Monday Mashup. It is October 8th. I'll be back with you next week. Tanner will probably be joining me again. We will have to wait and see. If not, I will have a guest lined up. We will figure something out so that it's not just me ranting for another 40 minutes. As much fun as that was for me, I hope you guys enjoyed it because I had a blast talking about it. And it's almost like a therapy session to get all that stuff about Michigan State off my chest, to get all that stuff about the Lions off my chest. It's my opportunity to get in here and vent, and it's like a therapy session, and I hope that you guys kind of feel the same when I'm saying what I'm saying. When I'm singing my song, I hope that you're able to kind of vent along with me and kind of get the same therapy session out of it. Thanks for listening. We love you guys. This is the Monday Mashup. Thanks for listening to Detroit Sports Podcast and supporting us. Go to DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Donate through PayPal if you don't mind. We love your support. We really appreciate it. You guys allow us to do this, and we love to do it. So thank you so much for listening, and have a great week.